first missions trip to Indonesia. And it was a surf missions trip, so I'm a surfer. So along from surfing, which I had great, um, emotional and spiritual relationships with God as well as people there. We also scored some of the best waves in my life when we were there. And the story I'm going to tell is not like it's not so spiritual, but it's like my mental state of which something I go through. So there's this one spot that we had to travel to by boat, and we were camping in the middle of the jungle at this spot called G-Land, and it's one of the most famous spots to go to in Indonesia. So I was 13 years old. I weighed just under just under 100 pounds. I was small and stocky, like I am right now. And so it was and all of a sudden a big swell came in there. And so waves were in the 10 to 15 foot range. And I was like 4'11", and I was surfing waves that were double overhead. So my aunt came to me and she's like, okay, do you want to go out at the top of the point called Kong? So there's different breaks at G-Land. It breaks along this one little reef stretch, and starts at Kong, and it goes through all the way to a spot called Money Trees, and all the way down to Speedies and then Chickens, and it's just like an endless barrel. So it's like a surfer's paradise. And of course, 10 to 15 foot, quadruple overhead for me. Like when I'm paddling over the wave, can't even see the sky. That's how big it is. That's how big it felt. And of course, it's waist deep, super sharp razor coral reef with jellyfish everywhere, right? So as we're paddling out, we're getting stung, and I just remember just having so much uncomfortableness going out there, but I still went out anyway. And I was watching my adult friends at the time getting some of the best waves of their life, and they weren't backing down, so I was like, why shouldn't I? So they get a big one, and then there's a smaller set that comes in, and this is like 30 minutes into the session where I finally gained enough confidence to take off on one of the craziest waves I've ever surfed in my life. So I take off as a little 7th grader on a 6-foot wave, so it was in between sets, and I remember just having that adrenaline feeling of dropping in, and then coming up, doing a turn, and then coming back down again. And then I kicked out of the wave, and all of a sudden the biggest set of the day comes in. 15 foot on my head. I'm scratching as hard as I can. First wave comes, lands straight on top of me. I'm getting ragdolled. I'm getting pushed, scraped up and down the reef. I'm holding my breath. I'd say I was under for around 30 seconds. Just getting ragdolled. I still have scars on my hands and my feet from getting dragged on the reef during this session. And then my breath started to run out. I started panicking. And for some weird reason, I don't even know why I did this. Normally when I panic underwater, I start scrambling around as fast as I can. I start, hyperventilating. I start worrying, okay, something's about to go down. That's not going to be pretty. But for some reason in this sort of time, I don't know if it was just my mental state of spiritual giving and allowing Jesus to work through me during this trip, but around the 20-second range, my breath was starting to run out, and I started to sing worship songs in my head. It was crazy to think, why would I do that? And even when I told my dad that when I came back, he's like, why in the world would you do that? You're getting held under, scraped across the reef. You can't even see anything. You don't know which way is up or down. And you're singing praises songs to Jesus. It was crazy. And, my whole mental state, I remember I was singing 10,000 Reasons by Matt Redman. And, in my head, I wasn't going, in the water and stuff like that. But, I just remember singing and praising God. I was like, my mental state was like, you know what, if God wants to take me now, let him take me. It's why would I say that? I'm 13 years old. Just been living 13 years. Why do that? All of a sudden, feel a little bit light, closing my eyes. I come up, take the biggest breath and the biggest relief that I've ever felt, only to have another one come and land on top of me. Same thing happens again. I don't know where my board is. It's somewhere attached to my leg, 6 feet off. I'm getting scraped across the reef, but yet I still continue to sing worship songs. And I just continue to have faith that if God wanted to keep me here and wanted to use me in some weird way, then he would bring me up. And if he didn't, he would let me float down. So again, I come back up. This time there's no more waves. I paddle back out somehow like relieved and happy that I just took the biggest set of my life on my head and nearly drowned twice. And I remember my friend saying to me, "Dang, that was a gnarly wave that you took on your head." And I was like, "Yeah, my worst." And so we ended up going in. 10 minutes after that, it was getting dark. We had to hike back through the jungle. And every time I look back on that story, it's crazy for me to think, like, how did I put that much trust and that much faith in God's will to bring me back up? So the passage I'm going to start talking about today is from Mark 24. And it's about this lady who's been suffering, not in my sort of way, but like something that's been suffering for a long, substantial period of time. In her case, this was in bleeding. I didn't really specify like internal bleeding or just simple bleeding of outside her skin. And, she just kept like struggling through her life and kept struggling to find help. No doctor could cure her. No doctor could save her. And Jesus was traveling through her town, right? And, crowds of a couple thousand people were watching him speak. And she walks up, somehow finds a way through the crowd, touches his cloak, and is instantly healed. And when she touched her cloak, Jesus replied, "Who touched my cloak?" And at first she was scared. She didn't want to answer. But then she said, "It was me, Jesus. I touched your cloak." And Jesus said, "Dear, you've had faith that the power of God would save you from the sickness that you have endured. And your faith and power in Lord God saved you. Just how I had faith in my will to come back up from that worst wipeout." But now I'm going to tell a little story that's not from my personal life, that more relates to this woman's sort of story. So my grandpa last year was diagnosed with one of the rarest forms of cancer. It was a pretty brutal time for our family, because since it was so rare, no doctor knew what to do. Just like this lady, no one could fix her. Basically, my grandpa felt like he was a waiting time bomb, waiting to die. At least that's how I saw it. And my parents spent hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars to try to get him the, care. And we ended up finding out that there was only one doctor that has done a little bit of research on my grandpa's type of cancer. So it's crazy. Our family is in a rush. We don't know what to do. No one has prescribed anything that my grandpa can do to help fight this cancer. And this cancer was a rare form of skin cancer in his head. So if it spreads to the brain, it's lights out. So we didn't really know what stage it was. It was rare and it was deadly. And so we continue to have, just pray about it. And, we were just so scared at this time, just like this woman was like, no one can fix me. No one can fix my grandpa. No matter how hard we try to find someone, no one can fix my grandpa. And finally, my parents spent a couple $100s to fly out to Seattle to see this doctor. And he said we're going to have emergency surgery on my grandpa. So this surgery happened during Boats seaside camp. So I wasn't there. I couldn't be there to support my grandpa. Instead, I was away, 6 hours away from him. And it was scary not knowing what happened to your grandpa. The person that, helped raise you when your parents weren't there. It was, I remember me and my sister were just devastated. Like, We didn't know what was going to happen. We didn't have our phones. We couldn't communicate any sort of way. But we should continue to pray about it. And we come home from boats. I go to see my grandpa as soon as I get home from boats. He has 50 staples in the back of his head. They had to open up his head, take the cancer out, and then pull it back together and staple it. So, we're going crazy, right? We're going crazy, like, oh my gosh, like, if one of these staples burst, like, it's not good. But my grandpa, when he went under, he told me that Jesus kind of put a calming relief over him. Knew that he was going to be okay, knowing that his life was in God's hands and he was okay with that. Just like how my life was in God's hands and I was okay with letting him use me. Just like how my grandpa let him do the work. And my grandpa put all of his fear and anxiety onto Jesus and trusted Jesus that he was going to be okay. So he comes out from the surgery and he told me, he's like, Ethan, I have never been so much more comfortable in my life with the craziest experience that I've had in my entire life. Out of the millions of people, billions of people in the world, I never thought this was going to happen to me, but it did. And I learned from God that if I just trust him and I have faith in him, that he will do his work and God does everything for a purpose, that I will be okay. And if he chooses to take me to heaven, that's great. I get to see my parents. I get to see all my brothers and sisters. Right? It's kind of like how Paul had this theory, or not this theory, he said when he was in prison that, kill me now. If you're going to kill me, great, let's do it right away. Because I want to see God. But if not, I'm going to keep serving. Just like my grandpa did. And now he uses this story to just kind of illuminate his neighborhood, saying that just have faith in God. Just like this woman did, have faith in God that he will take care of you. And my grandpa ended up having a lot more surgeries and radiation. But never once did he lose his sight on what God wanted to do. And now he beat cancer. He's perfectly fine. And he uses this story to definitely change my life and change other people. So I just want to encourage you guys to have faith in God's plan and what he does for you. It's all his work. And if you have faith in God, he will use you, he will save you, and he will help guide you. Just like he guided me to the surface of the wave, just like he guided the healing of that lady who had faith in him and trusted him. And just like he healed my grandpa from one of the rarest cases of cancer in the world. So trust God. Trust in his provisions. And he will reward you.